Hello, my friends. Hope you had a fantastic day or night wherever you are. This week, I'm back talking to Chelle all about mindset, how we stay resilient, but also what is burnout and how do we actually stay and be our authentic selves when it comes to how we show up in our organizations or our businesses. And if you did enjoy this interview and would like to see next week's episode, we'll be interviewing someone brand new and exciting to help you create demand rather than serve that market demand that's going to fluctuate, then make sure to be subscribed to the channel. And I'll now hand over to past me to conduct this interview. So thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me, and I'll see you in just a moment.
Hi, Carlton. My name is Chelle Verite-Shephard, and I'm known in the trade as a mindset empowerment coach. And I empower people to thrive, not just survive. So those people managers who are struggling with their authenticity or their productivity, I'm definitely the person to bombshell them into positive action. So that's what I do, and that's who I
I
am.
love all of that because there's a lot. I think there's a lot, and I was thinking where to start the show, but I think I'm going to start it there. There's a lot of, you called it tired in the pre-show. I'm going to call it concern, worry. People who are in a job are maybe concerned about being made redundant. They're worried about the economic challenge. People who are self-employed, they're worried about where's the next job coming in. Are the people we're on retainers with, if we're on retainers, are they going to see us as just a cost and then going to, question that value? So what do we do mindset wise? How do we look at this reality, which is there for a lot of people around how do we actually move things forward, right? Because I think it's very easy, I think we're going to talk a lot about, being tired, being worried, slightly burnt out. We've just come out of COVID. So there's been a lot going on, right? How do we tackle that from a productivity point of view, from moving forward point of view, from kind of showing up to either secure or give our managers more of those KPIs internally to help us keep our job, or to the market to say, look, we are still here, we are still strong, we can still add value, we can still help you?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting question. So there's lots of things to unpack there. The most important thing, I think, Carlton, is that everybody should be able to show up authentically and unapologetically themselves. And I think that's a mantra that I have, because one of the things that I lead, and it's in my book, but it's because you matter. And one of the things when we get very, very tired with the way that we're operating, especially when we have big teams, we have big challenges in the corporate world with all of our KPIs, and you mentioned all of the goals that we need to actually get hold of, we forget who we are and we forget just how valuable that is. And a lot of my time I spend with people helping them actually just ground themselves in just their own self-worth and understanding why they are there and why they matter. And I don't say that lightly. I say that so that people have that assurity and that certainty that A, they're not going to suffer from imposter syndrome, B, that they're really important, and what they do from an authentic point when they're in strength, when things are going really well, but also when things are in struggle, when it's difficult. Because having that vulnerability as a people manager is what people actually go towards in terms of the teams. They want to see the real person. And I think especially when we're tired, understanding just why we're there. So what's our own purpose? Why are we actually on this planet? And how are our values then connected to what we do? And I think, empowering people with that mindset to say, I'm not invisible. I grew up in a place where I was literally the only colorful face in 30,000 white people. And you have to build that resilience, and everybody has a story. And I think the most important thing is the story that we have, we need to learn to appreciate, and we're not invisible. And I teach people with toolkits to make them feel invincible, even when you're tired and that resilience level is low. So what I would say to people out there is, you're doing a fantastic job in terms of you're showing up every day, you're being real, you're being seen for who you are. And if you don't feel like that, then come and have a chat with me. But also, just think about, why are you here? What's so important? And that people really do value you, but don't always look for that external validation from other people. It's about, having that, I call it the crown of acceptance, having that crown of acceptance on you and actually believing in you. So mindset wise, there's a word, which is actually two words, but I'm going to pass it on to you. It's impossible. Because you either have the mindset where you're fearful about something, where you believe it's impossible, or you believe it's I'm possible. And I love that because it's the same word, it just has an apostrophe in it. So yeah, that's how I would offer it.
I think that's a really important point, because I think, I'll speak for a lot of business owners here. There's a lot of times when it's quiet. There's a lot of times when you're concerned about X, Y, Z, whatever it may be. In some cases, it might be cash flow. In other ways, it might be other challenges that happen in the business. But the mindset I've had for the last couple of years is, okay, I owe it to myself, I owe it to the legacy, I owe it to Brunton Media, I owe it to what I'm doing to show up and do my best every day. That's my yardstick, right? It's not, let's hit KPIs, let's hit this, let's hit that. Let's just show up every day, right? Now, some days that's harder than others, sure. But also, when life context happens, right? It could be anything, right? You've just gone for a breakup, etc., 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 right? I won't go into all of them, but like anything that is specifically going to maybe send you on a tailspin or mean you need to heal, or etc. There's a lot of things there that you need to reframe, and what I find is you need to reframe your current trajectory. So, give you an example. When like you get ill, for example, when we first decided, we were going to come together to record this conversation, you unfortunately came down with a cold, right? Okay, cool. So you couldn't show up as authentically or as well as you could. So, I think using you as an example, we had to reframe what our expectations were from that show. I mean, I think the reason why I bring it up is, are we naturally, either as business owners or people who work together and in organizations, do we sometimes not change those yardsticks with that context? Like when I coach people, I call it what's their personal context, because I think that's really important, because I think we're currently at a stage in the economy and the world where there's a lot going on that could kind of give us a tailspin. And I think we haven't had a moment or a time, because it's just been one thing after another thing or another thing. And I hate kind of saying it because it makes me feel kind of victim-y, but I think it's important to reflect sometimes to say, okay, well, what is that personal context? How did you rise to that challenge, etc.? But I guess the question that comes from that is, if someone is finding maybe they're too procrastinating, so they're losing their task because they end up scrolling TikTok, or they end up on YouTube, or they end up talking to a colleague, or whatever it ends up being. Or they're ended up, potentially like I was in COVID, where they're too fear-driven by what's on the news necessarily. That's a different conversation, but they're kind of like driven, their attention and their kind of energy is driven away from what their day-to-day should be. How do we either reclaim that or bring ourselves back to have that kind of conversation to say, look, things are difficult, things are not easy, and how can we show up, of course, authentically, but also consistently, because that's where the results come, right? So how would someone kind of reframe or course correct themselves back to, I'm here, I'm present, I'm doing the best I can mindset, would you say?
So that's really interesting. I think one of the biggest things that people put on themselves is pressure to be perfect and to do everything that they possibly can. And I think that's a lot of where procrastination comes from, or distraction, because either we're tired or we just don't feel confident enough to make that switch, that kind of, I believe in myself to be able to do what we need to do. So I think there's a couple of things going on there. How critical is your mind? So I always do it on two shoulders. You have your sabotaging devil mindset, which is your worst enemy, and you have your angel mindset that goes, yeah, you're absolutely brilliant, you can do everything you need to do. And so the first question I would ask is, firstly, how are you processing what's coming your way? Are you worrying about things? And do you feel out of control? Because if you feel out of control and then you worry about it, it's a bit like a rocking chair. All you do is just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And you'll find every distraction tactic that you possibly can to ensure that you don't do what you need to do, because you're worried about not delivering on what you're delivering. So you become very busy doing absolutely nothing. So there's that element, which is understanding, how do you process, I call it your fuck you worry times, because I love swearing, but that's what it is. It's making sure that you just have a grasp on what's real and what isn't. So, what's the wish list and what's the reality list. So that's one of the first things that I would say for people to get a hold of. The second thing I would say is, how critical is your mind? Yeah. Now everybody has a scale of 1 to 10 in their minds, thinking, well, you know, when I do something just before I do a task, or when I'm in the middle of doing a task, or after a task, we can be hyper critical. And if that critical level is so high at the beginning of a task, we will naturally procrastinate because we're frightened of the outcome. So if we think about how do we make sure we get rid and literally kick it to touch. I do a rugby ball kind of analogy when I work with people, but literally pick it up and just throw it away, but then replace it with something else that's far more meaningful. Now, for some people, that doesn't become, you know, something that's really positive. I call that your motivating Mac kind of situation. It doesn't become a positive experience. It only becomes a neutral experience, because some of us are so hypercritical that we're not actually able to reward ourselves anything at all. So it's just understanding your own mindset to say, how critical am I? How sabotaging am I being to me? And what do I actually want? Because if you don't want to be kind to yourself, you won't be kind to yourself. And deep down, those people who do procrastinate really want the respite of, I'm not quite sure, I'm uncertain. So it's getting you into that mindset of that, you know, that like I'm possible mindset, where you go, this is possible. And it's simply just a shift between, I could catastrophize about it, I could have a meltdown about it, but actually what I need to do is focus and become more hopeful on what I can do to get into that confusion, to figure out how am I going to get the results that I actually need. And that's the mindset shift. And it is as simple, Carlton, I figured this out, as saying, if this is my impossible mindset, what's my I'm possible mindset? And just figuring out where you want to go with it. And then you become real. And that's the challenge, is accepting what your reality is rather than the kind of dream state, if that makes sense. So yeah,
I think it's
about being human.
I think it's really common though to say like, oh, in an ideal world I would do X, right? But we haven't had an ideal world. Maybe some have, some haven't, right? Yeah. But something for the audience to consider is, have you actually had your ideal world? And a more important thing, in my opinion anyway, and something that I personally ground myself in every year, is what is my actual daily reality, right? Is my daily reality, my day-to-day, what I do, how I do it, what my averages are, what my average project size is, what my average costs are, what my average so on, right? What I get to do every day, right? Are those averages closer to what my dream was 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago? And if my answer is yes, then I'm moving in the correct direction. Maybe I don't have the massive tripled revenue, etc. reality right now. Okay, fine. But actually, I'm moving in the correct direction. I'm gathering skills. And something that I've focused on more nowadays is, how is my skills improving, and use that as my KPI of growth rather than how much is my income growing. Because it becomes harder, and can be, in my opinion at least, quite dangerous to focus on just your income growth. Of course, that's an element, and yes, you need to look at it. But as long as you're averaging or you're making a percentage improvement, great. You're doing what you can. Fantastic. The skills element is actually what's going to drive your growth in the long term, for allowing you to be more efficient, allowing you to be better at what you do, allowing you to become a better entrepreneur, a stronger business owner, a stronger role, whichever role, you know, job role, etc., which in turn means you add more value to either the market or the company you're in, which in turn means, in theory, that should be rewarded financially later on down the line, and have that delayed gratification, right? But I wanted to talk about the other side of that coin, because there's a lot of people who are very kind of driven, and they're very similar to my mindset, which is like, right, we've got a lot to do, push. And something that I've tried to do and find useful to do now is have a level of kindness related to how I take time off and how I'm using that time. But also, I'm noticing that my ability to continue to go has longer longevity, because I'm less likely to be closer to burnout. But in a nutshell, how would you describe burnout to someone who is maybe in business a couple of years, or just starting out in business, or is like in that job and they feel like they're like really grinding, and they're like, yeah, let's go, let's build, which I'm all for, right? Within reason, right? But what signs do we need to look for? Is burnout the mental breakdown? Is burnout the lead up to that? Like, what do you think? What is burnout in a nutshell for you?
Okay. So, in terms of answering that question, let me take you back to what you said about being the entrepreneur and starting the business. So, if we think about 3 years ago when we were in the throes of lockdown for COVID, the whole world changed. And one of the dynamics that I noticed, certainly being an entrepreneur, I lost all of my business model. Literally, my business just went kaput overnight. And I had 18 months of work planned. I was traveling, I was going to Europe, I was doing Britain, I was doing conferences. It was amazing. And it was all planned. And I had, like you say, camera's gone a bit funny, a trajectory. And it was really, really healthy. And literally overnight, that just completely and utterly was annihilated. And then I had to learn. I actually got banned from YouTube because I was like, I'll go live. It's not a problem. I was like wandering around in my living room the day before I was due to go live with everybody else in this new format that I had. And yeah, the bot got hold of me and decided that it wasn't going to work. And I got completely banned. And then I had to get everybody from YouTube onto Zoom. And I had no idea what Zoom was at that particular moment in time. And the reason why I tell you this is that I think we've had a massive reshaping of how we approach things and how we do things in business and how we make our money and how we create our own worth as an entrepreneur. I know certainly my model has changed dramatically. So most of my work's done virtually now. I've had to figure out all of the tech, all of the AI stuff that's come in. We've got the AI world coming in. So that is such a shift change where if you can get on board with that tech, you actually save yourself a lot of time. And I think one of the most important things, coming back to thinking about from an entrepreneur point of view, what does burnout look like? It probably looks like the relationships in your life not getting any quality time with the people that you need to get, and also spending so much time glued to your laptop that your eyes go fuzzy. I think, and I kind of laugh and joke about this a little bit, but if we think about the resilience levels, you can push yourself so much and work so hard. It's not actually about working harder, it's about working smarter. And how do you make sure that you have those boundaries that you can recoup? I used to work with Olympic athletes, and one of the most important things that Olympic athletes had was rest, as well as delivery and training and fuel and food. But rest is absolutely paramount. So literally switching off, not having that screen time, making sure that you do walk away, making sure that you have the human element. And I believe that people who experience burnout can come in many, many shapes. So you can catastrophize in your brain the logical burnout where you're mentally exhausted. You can have it on the emotional side where you physically cannot engage with the world because it's just too fearful, or you're too tired, or you're too tearful to be able to deal with it. Yeah. And we're all human beings. Every single one of us, without exception, will have faced that at some point, either through lockdown or dealing with the pressures that we've got being an entrepreneur. You'd be a liar to say that you didn't. Yeah. So we know it's how do we ensure that our stress levels don't send our physiological selves over the edge too much, but also mentally and also emotionally. So I think that the biggest rating of burnout for me is if you're emotionally drained, mentally drained, and also physically drained, then that's where the problems are going to lie. And you'll always be able to, almost register as a self check-in as to where you are on these things realistically. And it's not necessarily the number of where you are, it's the range. So if you are fluctuating a lot and you've got, I don't know, 7, in that range, that's a dangerous place to be. Whereas if you've got 2 in your range, that's okay. So I think it's just checking in and being compassionate and accepting to who you are. And the problem that entrepreneurs have, and I say this really respectfully, we have such a high work ethic and we have such a belief that we're going to be superstars and we're going to do what we need to do, that we don't have that high compassion level. So I would say, really, really watch out. And I say this openly to everybody. Just take a check to say, you said about recalibrating where you were, and it's not about money. Genuinely, we are rich beyond our wildest dreams. We get to create, we get to do all the stuff that we need to do. We don't have a boss, we're the boss, we're the leader of our kind of gang and what we're doing. And the amount of pressure that we put under ourselves is just horrendous. So take a step back, be a little bit more compassionate about it, watch your boundaries, check the relationships, check it's not your bank balance that matters, it's actually how rich you are in everything else that you've got. So I would say that's how to notice where you are, really notice, and then have the choice to do something about it.
I think that's really important as a mindset, but something that I just want to add to that is this principle that I follow for a very long time known as perspective. So the one I could use is we live clearly by the fact we're talking on Zoom, right, in some level of first world country, right? We don't, the natural like things we need to survive, shelter, food, water, etc., pretty much looked after, right? So actually we can speak from a level of entitlement, right? We can, but we need to be aware of that's what we're doing, because at the time of recording, at least, I don't have to worry about my house being bombed, right? I don't have to walk 3 miles to get clean drinking water, or water that might be 50-50 if it kills me or not, right? Now, I get some slack when I say this, because it's like, well, you're talking on a social platform on the internet about this. Well, yes, but the point that I'm making is you need to ground yourself in the understanding, firstly, that you're grateful for those things, and etc. And also, I remember we were, I've with my partner, I've been watching a lot of things lately, and one of the things was like from Thor about like how he gets older, right, and how he can limit. It's on National Geographic, and it was a production all about like how can we extend our life, right? And the end of it was basically, spoiler alert, in crux we have to accept the fact we're going to get old and the fact we're going to die, and everyone we love is going to die, right? And I think that's a really important point, because I noticed as we were going through it, I was like, well, I do that, great. And then when I got to the end, I was like, well, I've lived with the mindset of today might be my last day, today might be X person's last day. So that's why I never go to bed on an argument. That's why, I always remind people that I love them, etc., etc. And it sounds quite corny, but the reason why I bring this to the show is it's really important to ground ourselves in the perspective, because when things are difficult, when things are challenging, when things are concerning, perhaps, and that's why I alluded to earlier about what's your daily habit, what's your daily routine, what's your daily reality. Because if that's increasing, then your quality of life, regardless of how hard it may seem right now, has increased, right? Because yes, we're in a position where things cost more. Yes, we're in a position where you could describe it as a cost of living crisis or cost of living challenge. Sure, I see it as an opportunity to get better at what we do, so that in turn, when things become better, because they naturally will, the economy goes through cycles, blah, 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 blah. We don't know how long this cycle is going to be, sure, but we know it will get better at some point. And the question I have is, what is your skill set? Who are you going to be, right? So who's Colton going to be when things get better? I'm definitely not going to be the person I was, and I'm definitely not going to be the person I am today. What I hope is that I'll be a person with a better skill set at operating a business as an operator, to allow me to take a full advantage of the opportunities that I will be graced to get given because I show up every day, right? Now, I say this from a place where I have that mindset, right? And it's quite, you could describe it as quite a bulletproof mindset. But for those who either are starting out in business, they don't have this mindset. Because I've spent a lot of my time looking at psychology. I love looking at like, how do we tick? Why do we work the way we work, etc. It's why I'm a good marketer, etc., etc. But how would you say people should start down that road of self-development? Because I personally believe that every business owner, every person at all, if you're in any form of career doing anything, you should have a percentage of your time a month that you spend, even if that's like an hour a week or an hour a month to start, on self-development. That's pick up an audiobook, pick up a physical book if that's your preference, right? As dyslexic, my preference is never going to be pick up a physical book. Sorry, it's not, right? But I still go, okay, I'm going to make a habit of I'm going to listen to an audiobook at this time doing this thing, right? And it could be something monotonous, right? Like going on a walk, right? That's good for your health, etc. But you're also combining it with a mental self-development habit. And do you have any self-development habits, number one, but then number two, how would you suggest people actually create them? Because I think that's the catalyst to an extent that will be the difference between someone who rises to this challenge that we're all facing with at the moment and potentially going, nah, it's okay, nah, and they'll sort of like lean back into it's really difficult, it's quite hard, and you should be kind to yourself and understand it is, but also then rise to that challenge, right?
Mm. Okay. So one of the very first things that I would always recommend that people do is understand their value system. So most people know what they value, but actually to go into whatever research you need to do that, but to understand what are the first fundamental three core values that are going to lead your life. You know, why are you here? What does that look and feel like? And then to stretch that out slightly to think about, well, when you're at work, what do these actually play out like, and what do you experience when you're in the world? But then what's your top six? Now, the reason why I say top six is not that you'll communicate them a lot, but it will actually focus you in what's important and what it is that is fulfilling for you. Because fundamentally, people are trying to grow, trying to, as you say, build that skill, but they actually want to feel good. You know, we're not built to wake up and go, I want to have a shit day today. You know, it's going to be awful. We just end up at the end of it, we go, yeah, it was a shit day today, but we've survived it. And I think the most important thing is that we need to understand when we are connecting with their values, we feel amazing. You know, we make the right decisions, we talk to the right type of people, we make the right choices. And I think fundamentally, as an authentic kind of foundation for that, I always recommend people go find that out. If you don't know consciously, and you know, people wouldn't be able to tell you what they are when they have a conversation with you, or if you can't tell other people, go find that out. So that's the first thing that I would recommend. The second thing that I would recommend is to be in alignment with the value system is choose what's important to you. So there's 6 different things. In my experience, I've been doing this for the last 23 years and worked with, you know, huge amounts of corporate people. And just what I figured out is there's 6 different things that make or break people. And the first thing is, are you showing up authentically? Yep. In strength, in struggle, how are you communicating? The second thing, are you able to be brave? So are you confidently exerting what you need to be able to do? The third thing is about your resilience. So how much energy do you have towards it, and how can you bounce back? I call it the bounce back ability. Are you able to bounce back effectively? Now that's your foundation for self. And I would always recommend whatever things that you do. So for example, I go to the gym, I have a PT, I keep, you know, I still drink wine and I still eat lots of chocolate, but I do that for my mental health. That's for my resilience, for my bounce back. I keep a check on my sleep. I do all that kind of stuff. So there's certain habits that we have that you might not enjoy them that much. You said about going out for a walk. We take the dogs for a walk. You know, it's not enjoyable. Sometimes it is, depending on the weather. But we live in Britain. You know, usually it's pissing down with rain. But you know, thinking about these things is when it's in alignment with understanding, how is that going to help my resilience? How is that important to my value system? Why is it that I'm doing this sort of thing? You actually feel fulfilled and you stop what we talked about earlier, the procrastination. So when you have those foundations, those things are really important. But also then thinking we're not only just our person at home, we have to go and do our job, whether that's an entrepreneur or a people manager like the people that I work with. Then we have to think about, well, what's going to make me efficient? Yep. So what things can I do to make sure that I'm being productive, my workflow is right, so my job is easy to minimize that stress? And then thinking about the dynamics. Every relationship, we have the emotional bank account. So I'm sure you've heard about this before, but you know, everybody has coins that they put into a bank account. And when you're working with teams or you're working in relationships with other people, that has to be healthy. So you need to understand the dynamics of the relationships you're dealing with, because fundamentally those things make you successful, you know, whether that's financially, whether that's emotionally, mentally, whatever else. So I would say those elements need to be in alignment so you can choose the things that are important to you, so that you're not just randomly going, I know I'm going to watch YouTube and I'm going to get distracted by stuff because this seems really interesting. You actually have a purpose for that whole development piece, so that, you know, you might only have 20 minutes that day. What are you going to do to spend that 20 minutes focused on? Is it that you're going to boost your confidence, that there's a certain thing that you want to speak up in meetings, for example, right? So you might then go, well, where's the YouTube stuff that I could go and get? Is there a TED talk on it that I can go and have a look at? Is there, you know, an audio book, or is there something that I can connect to that's going to have meaning for me? And I think we get it wrong sometimes, where we just kind of go, it's all right, I've been on YouTube, I've learned lots of stuff. And it's like, but why is that important? Where's the kick that you're going to get? Where's the kind of rush that you're going to get from learning something and then applying it? Because it's not up here. The change in behavior does not happen up here, you know. Habits, we have to let go of old stuff to let new stuff in. So actually, we need to then focus on what behavioral change am I going to get that's going to make me feel good and make a difference to my success. And that's what I would say to everybody is check with what you're doing. Is it in alignment with something that's going to make you feel good? So your values, and does it matter? Does it make a difference? Because if it doesn't, you're wasting your time. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, you can read a book and chill out. And I love pink romantic books and everything else. You can do all that. But if you really want to develop and focus that even 20 minutes, then think about what you want to get out of it.
I think that's really important. I think it's something that we sometimes overlook, but quickly on that like emotional bank thing. I can't remember exactly where it came from, but I remember hearing it's whether you're an extrovert or an introvert. And like sometimes this is a very quick tangent, but I think it's important to talk about because extroverts on an average will gain energy, will gain inspiration, etc. from having a conversation, right? Introverts, e.g. internal people who love being alone with themselves in their own space, in their own energy, right, are going to be less likely, or they're going to be slightly drained from a social reality, right? Whether it's on a podcast or conversation or a meeting or etc. And the way that this study, I think it was, described it was coins, right? So the person who is in their own energy and in their own space, they need to spend time in their space to gain some coins, right? And when they've done that for a period of time, they have coins, and they can then spend those coins when it comes to having conversations, when it comes to connecting with others, when it comes to articulating themselves or doing just the natural, boring, I go to the shop, I say hello, I get a coffee, blah, blah, etc. All of that, right? And then on the other side of it, if you're an extrovert, someone who enjoys conversation, enjoys meeting people, enjoys that, and that comes naturally to you, or that's your natural skill set, like it was mine and has become mine, you gain coins from having those interactions. Right? And the reason why this is an important thing to think about is because you need to ask yourself, what truly are you, and not judge what you are? Because if you are an extrovert, perhaps it would be a good idea to structure your marketing, structure how you operate, structure your life, right? But specifically in an entrepreneur lens, structure your marketing and how you sell and how you communicate and how you articulate what you do to be structured around things that give you more energy. Right? Structure things around how that fires you up, that gets you excited, that allows you to think about new ideas, right? Like, and maybe it's you need some inspiration, so you watch a video specifically, or you deliberately take time off and do a specific thing so you can get those ideas, so you can get that change of perspective. I referenced an National Geographic show earlier. That's one of the reasons why I'm starting to do that, because I'm noticing, actually, wait, they do that in that show. I'm going to nick that. That's a good idea, right? I also, though, it goes the other way as well. From an editing point of view, I saw something yesterday that was like, that's weird. I don't like that, right? But that's cool. That's the point, right? Because you can now cross and reference it. But really quickly, it's wrong of me not to run a marketing show and not talk about marketing. So how does someone, they're showing up authentically, they understand what they need to do to gain their coins, right, to give that energy, because I think that's why I brought it up, because I think it's a really important analogy to think about. How do we have this emotional energy? How do we have this fire in our belly? Because some people have this kind of, I need to be in my own space, I need to be really zen. Other people, as I say, have to have that social connection. No strange to me, I have to have the social connection. There we go. But how do we tackle that, and how do we actually turn that or flip that or help that kind of point our marketing or really sort of synergize with our marketing, would you say, to really help consistently communicate? Because the key to marketing in my view is you have to do something that you really enjoy consistently to be able for it to work, right? Depending on who you ask, that might be email, that might be video, that might be social media, that might be billboards, that might be flyers, that might be going in the street talking to people, that might be going to networking events, that might be wearing an A-board and walking around your town. All of it works, is the honest answer. All of it works, right? The question is, what can you do and you're going to enjoy consistently, and or can you spend money on to then outsource, right? The same is true of a website, same is true of blogs, etc. But just to reiterate the question, how does someone create that core strategy of how to, in your view, actually create marketing that works. Because I think right now there's a lot of fluff pieces around like, you should do this and you should do this and it's amazing. But what people really want to know the answer to is what actually works. Because they need the results, right? Especially if they're in a challenge or concern regarding cash flow, or they're like, things are a bit quiet, not really sure what's going on, I'm a little bit concerned, etc. They need a way to at least focus and sort of understand, okay, if I do this consistently, it will gain the results. And of course it's subjective, but what would you suggest people start with to really start honing in on what's going to work for them from a marketing point of view?
So this is really interesting. So from a marketing point of view, it's kind of different from a person point of view, but let me amalgamate the two. And I think if you start off with what we call the entrepreneur sweet spot, so that spot between the problem that you're solving, the stuff that you're really good at, your expertise and that you absolutely love, and the area of money, because you need to get paid. Yep. Now, I know a few years ago, I was like, I know I can help all these different types of people. They didn't have any money, so they couldn't actually buy my product. And I was kind of thinking, doesn't matter how much I actually market myself to these people, they can't afford to buy me. So actually, that was one of the biggest mistakes that I made, which was, yes, I was consistent. Yes, it was showing up. Yeah, this was absolutely working, but they just couldn't afford to buy my product. So I think the most important thing from my perspective is understanding, are you in the right market first and foremost? So have you got people who can buy? How are you being authentic in the way that you are actually selling? Because if you're not, and you're selling something that you don't believe in, that's going to be difficult for you to actually sustain. And is there something there that you solve a particular problem? So once you've established that, then I think it's looking at, well, what do you like? You're talking about the emotional bank account, and absolutely the introspective people, they're going to want to be more creative. They probably want to do more blogging. They're probably going to want to do more like articles, all that kind of stuff from a consistency point of view on LinkedIn, etc. Whereas those people who like talking, they're going to be on Instagram, they're going to be doing different things. And I think it's noticing, how does your brand show up? So my brand now, I rebranded. It started in January. Everything is pink. It's not even in my color palette, but I absolutely love the color. And it's lovely and vibrant. Someone said, are you even going to get a pink car, Chelle? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that everybody knows I'm in the house. And I think it's just about choosing something that you can stick to, that then people can recognize. So that's the first thing that I would say, whether that's a writing style, whether that's a pinkness, or it's your brand colors. So that's really important. And then also thinking about, what's the message that you're sending out? So does it solve a problem? Is that something that you can actually achieve? And then it's choosing what you actually enjoy to do, because marketing's tough. Like, this as well as I do. Spoken to our friend Lenny about all of this in terms of marketing as well, and it's tough to keep going. And I think if you're throwing an article out there that's add value to the audience that that you can help, then that's when it becomes successful. So it doesn't, to me, in my mind, pick something that you enjoy doing, but be consistent to the market that you're actually focusing on. And whether that's a video, whether that's a book, whether that's a podcast like you do and that consistently comes out, or an article, whatever it happens to be, stick to that, because you need to enjoy it. Yeah. And I would say, if you're not enjoying it, that's when life as an entrepreneur becomes really hard, because it is hard getting that marketing out. So from my personal experience, I'm still learning. You'll see my stuff comes out a bit inconsistently sometimes. I need to get the consistency levels up, but the brand colors are the same. The messages are the same. Everywhere I show up, it's the same. So people know what they're going to get. And it's just thinking about that vibrancy and thinking about, what is it when people start to think about you? Is that in alignment with your values? Is it something that people can recognize? And does it add value? So before you even do the video, before you do like anything else, answer those questions first and then enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, my mantra is enjoy it, don't endure it. If you're enduring it, do less. If you're enjoying it, do more. And that's the whole point. That would be my kind of...
No, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think, something that I've kind of reframed a little bit in my mind at the moment is, how am I being client-centric, right? Because I noticed I drifted off a bit, right? I was not like far off, but I was noticing like I'm not putting the client at the center of what I do like as much as I used to. So let's reframe that. Let's bring that back in. Let's really, really ask the hard questions of, okay, well, if someone's going to spend money with me, if I was them, how and why, right? How can they spend money with me, and why would they spend the money with me, right? And what do they then expect from a feeling, but also from a tangible product point of view, right? And when I started doing this, I noticed that I was showing up more consistently, I was showing up better, and I was actually understanding and being more in tune with what my ideal person was, and also what their concerns were, right? And, as you say, look, being consistent and showing up every day is difficult, right? It is, right? Regardless of whether you're marketing, regardless of what you're doing, it's hard. It's hard work, okay? But the thing that I've always said, and, I think let's wrap up soon, but for me, I wanted to mention the fact that sometimes things in life will not allow you to be consistent, okay? And I think it's about how we reflect on that. In an ideal world, I'd have a podcast every week. In an ideal world, I'd have a vlog every week. In an ideal world, I'd have X, Y, Z, Z, so on, so on, so on. Okay, cool. But X has happened, Y has happened, etc. has happened. I've got to focus on this. Client needs something quickly that I wasn't expecting. So all of these things, personally, professionally, combination of the above, they're going to happen. Right, and the question you need to ask yourself is, yes, it's important. Yes, you need to do it. Yes, you should show up. Yes, you shouldn't slack, etc., etc. But are you doing your best? That's it. That's the only question I always ask myself every single day. Given all of your own personal context, are you doing the best you possibly can to balance, plate spin, whatever you want to call it, balance everything that you need? That's personally, professionally, everything, right? Because the reality and how much we do, right? What I was doing and how much I was doing a couple of years ago, very different to what I'm doing now, right? In the same way, in the next couple of years, I imagine all that will change again, right? And I think sometimes we sit here and we beat ourselves up going, oh, I'm going to miss a week of the show. At the time of recording, I think I haven't posted a podcast in 2 weeks. The real reality is not many people care that much. They don't. They actually don't. In a nutshell, they don't, right? I care because I'm proud and I want to be daily and I want to be weekly, but I've still shown up on social, right? I'm still posting, I'm still out there, I'm still consistent with my marketing. Yes, ideally, it's not my ideal content schedule and maybe I'm missing because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, fine. But the question that I always ask there is then, okay, well, are you doing the best that you could? Are you doing the best that you can with the realities that happen to yourself? And something that I didn't do in my earlier career that I'm very grateful for and I try and ground myself in now is not giving that personal context. And that's why I wanted to sort of weave it into the whole show, because I think that's more important than ever right now. Because if you're having to firefight in the business to survive and then you succeed and then you actually continue to survive, that's the win. Not what didn't I do? What couldn't I do? Oh, maybe the gym has fallen a bit to the side because I have to keep the business alive. Or, oh, maybe I'm out at present with this person because I've had to do this, right? And saying, okay, that's okay. But you're aware of that change, you're aware of that reality, and you're now going to say, okay, cool. I did the best I could, and I'm now going to reframe and say, right, this is now what I need to focus on, right? And that's okay. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the more important, that's the thing that we should consider when we're in business, when we're in a job. And if anyone's going to, has got 43 minutes in, and is listening to this and thinking, okay, well, what can I take away from this? Listen to this. Are you doing your absolute best? And it's key to be, and the key for me is to be very, very honest with that. Right? If your answer is yes, honestly, great, fantastic. It's not about bullshitting yourself either. Because if you think you can be doing more and should be doing more, then you need to. Because for you, not anyone else. But for those who really enjoyed this conversation, for those who want to connect with you, to continue this conversation outside of this piece of content, where's best for them to do that?
Ooh, well, I'm on LinkedIn, so Chelle Verite-Shephard. There is only one of me, and I've just launched my very pink and very vibrant website. So that's www.cvscoach.co.uk. So you'll find me on that one, and reach out genuinely. There's lots of material. I've got numerous amounts of things, and you can buy the book as well. I haven't really plugged it, but this is amazing. I'm not going to say anything else more about it, but 524 pages filled with motivational life toolkits. I've given away everything for free. It only costs you 15 quid from Amazon. So yeah, go find it on there. So yeah, genuinely. And I always say, coming back to what you mentioned as well, is the wish list versus the reality list. You know, we can be spending our time very much in that wish list of things and we never get it. Stay in reality. You know, I talked earlier on about the impossible versus the I'm possible, but this is very much about being real, showing up and being seen for who you are, and just understanding that whatever you do, like you say, it's important to you because you matter. And I genuinely mean that. So show up unapologetically being you, and you'll smash it out of the park every single time.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much for the time. And if you're going to leave the audience with one final piece of advice, what would you say? What would you say?
Enjoy, don't endure.
Thank you ever so much for joining me, ladies and gents. I hope you took value from this video. If you did, and you are new to the channel and would like to not miss another interview like this, then why not be subscribed to the channel? I'll see you very, very soon for some brand new content. Have a lovely rest of your weekday, evening, etc., wherever it is for you. And I'll see you very,